Father's Day is coming up, and Michelle was asking me for ideas of anything that she could get me, anything that I wanted. I didn't really know what to tell her. There's not a whole lot that I really need right now. We're just kind of at that point in our lives. But it did come across something a little different for me. I told her if you could find a reprint of a painting that I came across, that'd be kind of cool. Now, I'm not a painting guy. I'm not an art guy. I don't really understand that whole world. I can appreciate some of that stuff, but I don't understand, symbolisms and imageries and how they use their colors to this means that, and I don't understand any of that kind of stuff. But this painting made sense to me, partly because it was of cowboys. And those of you that know me, I'm kind of a cowboy guy. The original painting was done back in 1895 by a guy named Frederick Remington, who was pretty famous for doing a lot of cowboy scenes. And the painting it's two cowboys. One's just dismounted the horse, one's on his horse, and the two guys are right next to a fence. And the title of the painting is called The Fall of the Cowboy. And so the idea that Remington was getting across in that painting is that as the nation grew, we began to put up more fences. And as fences went up, that kind of brought an end to that whole cowboy era. That kind of was the end of that kind of iconic part of our American history. As the fences went up and began to create separation with property and livestock and all those kinds of things, it brought that cowboy era to an end. Now, fences are not always a bad thing. I mean, fences, barriers, walls, they create separation. They keep certain things in and they keep them safe, and they keep unwanted things out. I'm outside right now, and we've got a fence around our yard, and we really appreciate that. It keeps our dog safe. We know that we can let our dog out and she's not going to wander off. We can tell the kids, you can go outside and play, just stay in the fence, and they're pretty good to do that most of the time. And we feel it gives us a little bit more sense of safety that they're going to be okay because they're in this fence. And so in one sense, barriers, walls, fences are not necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes you do need to create separation. But anytime that you build or put up things that create separation, there's always the potential for that to cause problems. Fences, walls, and barriers that create separation in our lives can create things like feelings of isolation. That can create the potential for anger, for disagreement, for division with other people. And Sunday morning we looked at Ephesians chapter 2, we looked at verses 11 through 22, and Paul, who wrote that letter, talked about some of those kinds of things. He even mentions barriers and dividing walls that actually create hostility. And for them it was this division between Jew and Gentile, everybody who wasn't a Jew. And so as Jews become followers of Christ, and as Gentiles become followers of Christ, they all become a part of the family of God, but yet they didn't see each other as family because they still had their fences that created their separation built up. And I think in our culture right now, there are so many examples of fences and barriers and walls that we've put up. Some of those are political. I know with everything going on, it's kind of easy to forget there is an election coming up, and that always reminds us of how divided we are in so many ways. We have this ongoing conversation now about race, and there's so many different opinions and perspectives on that. There's still an ongoing debate about what's the right and wrong thing to do with this pandemic that's still kind of hanging around. And so there are so many ways that we can take things like opinions and our perspective and our experiences, and we can use those to create fences. Again, not always a bad thing, but when those opinions and experiences and perspectives build fences that make it hard to do what Jesus calls us to do, love our neighbor, well, that gets to be a problem. Really, in so many ways, if there are fences that create separation between us and other people, one of the byproducts of that can be a lack of peace. And as you look at our world right now, as you look at our nation right now, there's not a lot of peace. If you have some conflict or some disagreement or different opinions in your own home, there's a tension there, that there's a limited degree of peace in the home when there are divisions. So most of us are pretty good about building fences in our own life. And sometimes that's a good thing, keeps us safe. But sometimes those fences create barriers and hostility. And so the only way to kind of move past those fences and to get to maybe a healthier place where we can be united and one is you got to find some common ground. And the only common ground that I can think of that can far surpass our opinions, our perspectives, the amount of facts that we have, whatever our experiences have been, is Jesus. Now, you can find unity with other people around a sports team. I love going to games back when you could go into an arena and go watch a game. And one of the cool things about it is you can sit with total strangers, and when your team is doing well, you are high-fiving, sometimes even hugging. It's a cool experience to be united around a team, but that's not enough. You need something that can far surpass our different political beliefs, our different life experiences, our perspectives, our preferences. And the only thing that can supersede all of that is Jesus, who came to break down dividing walls. In that verse with that Ephesians chapter 2, over in verse 13, he says, "In Christ Jesus, we who were far off have been brought near." All of us were sinners separated from God. Our sin created a fence, and Jesus on that cross tore down that fence, and through his blood he's brought us all into one family. And then verse 14 of Ephesians chapter 2, Paul writes, "He, Jesus now, is our peace. He has made two groups one. He has destroyed barriers and all the dividing walls of hostility." There are so many barriers in our world, so many fences that create division and separation with other people. You might even be experiencing some of those things in your own relationships, maybe even in your own family, conflict with a spouse, disagreements with children, adult children, maybe even some division between you and a sibling. There are so many fences that we can draw that keep us separated from other people. But Jesus can tear down every fence. If we look to Jesus and follow Jesus and love like Jesus, he'll break down all those dividing walls, and he will be our peace. Peace that we all need so desperately. So as you go about this week, as you live in a world that is very divided, I pray that you would be a peacemaker, that you would tear down fences, that you would table your opinions, your preferences, and even kind of hold your life experiences lightly in a way that you can receive from Jesus. So I pray you would be a follower of Jesus who loves and who is an instrument of peace in a world that's divided. And in Jesus, we'll all be one.